Now I have a question. These automatic weapons, are these war weapons? I mean, are these are weapons that, under ordinary circumstances, would only be used in armed conflict?
Yes, as I understand it.
Okay, that was so. But they're
Yeah.
out on the streets.
Right.
Okay.
And have been for a long time.
Yes, but technically, these are weapons that you would only see in armed conflict, in war.
The classic Tommy gun, okay, that was produced at the end of World War I for it was actually called the trench sweeper. It was intended and specifically for trench warfare, exactly.
Okay.
Well, it came out too late, came out like 1918, 1919, so there wasn't much military sales. Next year, it was sold on the open market, and that's why it became the gangster gun of choice.
Sarah, you know, that's a very insightful question, because many people don't know the history of these weapons. They're busy living their lives. They don't have time to think about the history of all this stuff. The history of the handgun is another interesting thing. Handguns were invented for one reason: kill other people. They weren't invented for any other reason. That's what they were for. Even the flintlock was. You ever try to shoot one of those things and hit anybody? You can't. It's hard as heck to do. It's hard to use.
And I think that raises the interesting question of the assault rifles. They're not really good target weapons. If you have a good hunting rifle, it's much more accurate. Simultaneously, it's not necessarily good as a personal defense weapon. You're in a relatively closed area. You start shooting that gun, it's going to go boom, boom, boom. It's going to climb up to the right. The bullets are going to go everywhere. You know, the Chicago, when I was in high school, they had a nasty shooting in Chicago. One of those cases where somebody shot at somebody entering their house and went through the wall and killed a baby in the next house. And they had a whole big thing about what weapon should you have at home for self-defense. And they were talking about basically a shotgun with bird pellets in it and no choke. So you hit the biggest possible areas possible, so you hit the guy rather than miss him.
But you know, I just want to deal with one group of people, but for that young adult, that gun is a rite of passage. It's a very male, macho kind of thing. And it's like a driver's license was for kids in our
and so
generation.
we should give the people the rite of passage and to heck
No,
with the
but
dead
I
people?
think the
Come on,
culture,
give me a break here.
No, the culture that David was talking about has made this, you know, this whole culture of violence has caused this to happen.
Yeah.
But it has the same status. Remember when you got your driver's license?
I
And
don't
you
remember. I started driving when I was 15. I was driving way before I had a driver's license. It
Okay,
wasn't
you
a-
were breaking the law.
I was.
Okay.
I was
All
breaking
right.
the law.
But you know, there were things that young boys did and young girls did at a certain age where you felt like, oh, I'm finally grown. And unfortunately, these children, a lot of these children, I'm not talking about the adults who are engaged in this, but a lot of these children have no success in life. They're not successful in school. They can't read, write, or count. They don't know how to behave, so they're always in trouble, and they've turned that into a positive. So how do they assert themselves and achieve some sense of manhood? And unfortunately, it's those guns, and somebody's making a lot of money, because how are they out on the streets?
You know, it's also making a lot of money, as David's pointed out. I mean, Hollywood.
Yeah,
You know,
Hollywood.
okay.
You know,
They're making a lot of money on the...
These movies glamorize this. We've always sort of lived up to the Hollywood stars, and now the glamorous person is the one who can pull out the gun and blow away half the room, and that's seen as, oh wow, look at how powerful that individual is. That's not the only problem, you know. But if we got rid of all, you know, assault weapons, for example, if we could define that, you're still going to have a lot of killings in Youngstown. They're going to be done with handguns. Are they going to be done with the weapons that are already out there? Granted, less.
It's a lot more difficult.
Right.
But let's
to kill
face it, we have a
bastards
Sandy
that
Hook
way.
every year in Youngstown. You know, if you look at the overall numbers of people who are being killed, you know, the numbers are pretty close to what we lost, you know, at Sandy Hook. So it's not just the school shootings. We've got a much, much larger problem. You know, I always go back to my favorite politician, who is, you
Who's
know,
that?
former Senator Moynihan.
Yeah,
You know, who
Moynihan is
basically
cool.
said, look, the conservative truth is that, you know, culture is more important than politics, and the liberal truth is that politics can change culture. So, you know, you have, you know, both of these ideas at work here. It is the culture, but there is something we can do politically that the government can do, maybe to alter the culture and alter this scenario that we live in here. But we need to, I think, step back and start calmly talking about this.
Yeah,
My personal gripe is that the gun industry in general and gun ownership in general has less legal liability than somebody who manufactures a lawnmower. I can't wrap my mind around that. I mean, one is far, far more deadly. But if you get your fingers cut off on that lawnmower, you have more legal rights than if the gun blows up and blows your hand off because it's badly manufactured.
You know,
that's
what's
just wrong,
intriguing to me is this fact that we're not supposed to talk about this stuff. We're not supposed to have these conversations. Come on, I get to talk about this stuff.
Well, you know, it's a political hot potato.
I know, and
It
you know
really
what? I want to
is,
talk
yeah.
about
It's
this
very
stuff.
hard to talk about this without sooner or later having somebody, most recently Joe, you know Joe in our department. You know him.
You can't talk about it.
Well, no, he's into it. He loves it. He's one of these guys who thinks that Sandy Hook may have been a government conspiracy so they can take their guns.
Oh.
And what is the next phrase out of his mouth?
Horrible.
And if you try to take my gun,
I'll shoot
I'll
you.
shoot you. Okay, I'm a law-abiding
I
citizen.
don't remember
But I'll
voting
shoot you.
for Norquist. I don't remember voting for any of these guys. They're telling me I can't talk about stuff. They're telling me that the people I vote for are not allowed to talk about it because she's going to go get them.
There's a lot.
That's the thing that's bothering me. We can't have. You're right, Paul. We have to have a conversation about this, but not being prohibited from having a conversation is a problem. That 69-year gap is not just legal maneuvering. I'm concerned people are afraid to talk about it.
But I
Well-
think that President Obama coming out with this is going to force some conversation. I don't think this is the answer. I don't know what the answer is, okay? But I think it's going to force some
The
conversation.
problem is the
I think
nature of that
you're right.
conversation is already started with the NRA putting up several $1 million to do what's going to be you're a communist because you want to take my gun away, is what it amounts to. I mean, they're going to be yelling and screaming and shrill. The sort of thing we've seen before, and those commercials should probably.
But again, you know, in part, the NRA's strength is not just their money. It's the fact that in certain parts of this country, there's a lot of people that feel exactly the same way the NRA feels, and they're single-issue voters.
Yeah, and I think that's a problem. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with the gun culture. I mean, a lot of people start handling guns within their family context at the age of 5 or 6, and start hunting as a child, literally. But that's not necessarily the group that's performing these crimes. But that group certainly reacts. Whenever you say, I want to keep the guns out of the hands of the bad guys, these people say, well, you're not taking mine, and I assume that you're going to take out bad guys, you're going to take them off everybody.
But you know, there's an individual responsibility there, and I think that's what disturbs me most about Sandy Hook. This mother, and you know, mothers are in denial about their children, but she knew her son was not stable. Of all the hobbies, of all the things to teach him, why would you take someone who was mentally unstable and take them out and show them how to
And you
shoot?
know what? You're right about that. And the other thing
So
is,
she's
what
not-
the heck does she need a magazine that's that big with a
Right.
repeating weapon,
What-
even
what
if she
were-
didn't have a kid who was sick?
So I mean, so there's certain things that are just common sense.